click the got it button here. All right. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you again for joining us. A huge welcome to new members. We so greatly appreciate your time, and a welcome back to our regular interest group, I guess regulars, if you will. Always great to see you. It's always great to talk to you month after month. Thanks for taking time to join us today. So the topic of today's discussion and this month's discussion is a return to the office, a March 2022 update. And so much has changed just within the last couple of months of 2022 that we thought it might be a nice time to kind of go and revisit sort of what we're doing and strategies for coming back. We've got mask mandates that are being lifted. We've got different, I think, approaches that the different legal departments are taking. And we just wanted to we thought it might be a very helpful thing just to kind of discuss where everybody is and what everybody in a forward-looking capacity is going to do about going back to the office. Dawn is back in the office, and I'm jealous. But and that was really kind of the genesis of the topic. It was something that kept being brought up in some of the other calls that we were on across the industry, and we thought it might just be a nice time to revisit it. So hence, that's how we got here. So we appreciate your thoughts. Obviously, it's a roundtable discussion. We appreciate anything that you bring to the table about what you're doing and what you're thinking about and what you're considering as you return to the office, if you haven't already, or things you've considered if you're already back in the office. And without further ado, it's 10:04. We can get started. So we put a couple of questions in the meeting invitation, and we would love to hear your thoughts. And the first one is really around what your current plans are for returning to the office, I should say, if you haven't already done that, or if you already have, we'd love to hear what you've considered when you do that. And what we'll do, we'll open that up to everybody here on the call, and please share your experiences and best practices.
Yeah. And for those of you that are new, we just jump in. in. So yeah, just so you know.
We're very freeform in internal resources. So
sorry, Heather.
This is Heather. I'll help break the ice. We are in waves 1 through 3 are back in the office. We have 4 more waves so I'll have the whole law department back by May 2nd, I think. And we're in North Carolina, in a kind of a little bit outside of a densely populated area. So, a big campus, lots of room. So it has been fine. Definitely some people that were afraid to come back, but after they were back for a couple of days, they're like, it's no big deal. The one thing that I'm planning for next week, because now that I have some support staff back in the building, they haven't had to send a FedEx for 2 years. They haven't had to order office supplies for 2 years. Like, we got new AV technology and all this conference rooms while they were out. So because I don't want to send every FedEx or start every Teams call on a AV equipment, I have to do some training. I have to help them refresh their memories as to what in-office work duties are and help them. So we're going to do a little game show next week about how you do things in the office, help them get back up to speed.
Very good.
Oh, that's fun. That's really a fun way to do that too. I mean, my admin staff, none of them had ever been in the office. So there was one time when I was like, oh, just go to the room that's on the other side of and I said whoever's office it was, and they were like, I don't know where that's at. So that's such a great idea to get people kind of acclimated and reacclimated to the processes. Thanks for that.
Yeah, and we've definitely had people start during remote work, so they've never been in the office. So it's like, I call it was like dorm move-in. I had some freshmen who didn't even know where the bathroom was, and I had some sophomores who kind of knew their way around campus, but had sort of had some brain drain. But it was honestly like every wave, it's like dorm move-in day.
Yeah.
Who's coming back today, and helping them get set up. So it hasn't been awful, but there's definitely been some reluctance and some people that are just kind of afraid of the unknown.
When you say the May 2nd return date, is that a mandatory day where everyone has to be back in the office, or is it just an option for anyone that wants to be in the office?
So their badges will be reactivated, their access will be reactivated. The expectation is, so legal is deemed in office. We have a couple different distinctions: remote, flex, hybrid, whatever. Everyone in legal is on campus status. Okay. So if they have special needs, they have to work that out with their manager. but they will have campus access. I know we have 1 or 2 people like that are 8.5 months pregnant that are just like, you know what, I'll be back after maternity leave. That's up to the manager.
Okay. That's good. We're officially back, but it's a manager's discretion. So to your point, that if we say everyone needs to be in the office, then they'll have to be in the office, but it's manager discretion. So for the legal department, we won't have that requirement. It'll just be whatever, we just need it on the calendar so that we can have the offices prepared and make sure that we have things available for people when they come in, like meeting rooms and things. But we won't, no one's mandatory. No one has to be here for any amount of it. So at this point, at this stage.
Absolutely.
Anyone else?
Dawn, I can kind of give you a little bit of an update what's going on at Walgreens. At the current moment, our offices are essentially closed, whatever that means. But we do have people that go in, and we are anticipating a return to work on Monday, April 4th. And so I'm greatly looking forward to that date, because up until January, I was coming in pretty regularly all along. And I think one of the things that we're considering at Walgreens is, as mask mandates change and as temperature recording, there's been a big change, I think, in the protocol for coming back to the office. We at current moment still have to fill out an online health questionnaire about, have you been exposed to COVID or anything like that. But per an email communication that we had of a couple of days ago, they're going to take out the temperature check stations. So I think that was an interesting development. Certainly, hopefully a move in the right direction. But the state of Illinois, where the vast majority of our support center people are located, went away from a mask mandate on Monday. So what that means, I think, according, what that's going to mean on campus, much like Heather, we are a suburban campus. So it's driving, we are 25 miles away from downtown Chicago. So not quite as densely populated as downtown Chicago would be. So that's where we currently stand. And I think we're going to hear more in the next couple of days about returning to work on April 4th. So uncertainty abounds at this current state, but, hopefully we'll get that picture will kind of fill in, and we'll see what it looks like in a couple of days as we prepare for April 4th. So
anyone else?
I can chime in from Coveris, Kim Tobin from Coveris. Hello, everyone. Currently, we are not back in the office. It's volunteer basis only. We were scheduled to go back most recently February 14th, but because of Omicron, that got pushed out again. So now we're on I'd call it a 30-day notice, but our senior management, yesterday was the first day. We have an anchor day on Wednesday. All senior management is now expected to be in on Wednesdays. We're in Boston, so we have travel concerns, train schedules, bus schedules. Boston is lifting its mask mandate this Saturday, so that'll be another consideration that we have to think of. We're expected to go back if you're considered full-time in the office, full-time. Now you'll be in the office 3 days and at home 2 days. Not sure what those days will look like, but would imagine there would be, again, an anchor day for the team, for the legal team. And I'd say one of the concerns, in addition, to transportation and just everyone getting acclimated to being back into the office together, is probably most likely a reduction in productivity, just because you're adding in travel time. People aren't going to be, kind of readily available 24/7 like they are at home. So I think that's probably a concern that we're looking at. That's where we're at with Coveris.
Nice. Thank you.
Great.
Yeah, we returned officially February 14th at Crown Castle. Most of the company is on what we're calling the hybrid model. So it's 3 days in the office and 2 days at home. You could pick 2 of those days. And then Wednesdays, we call them Purple Wednesday, as our company colors are purple, but everyone's in the office on Wednesdays so that there's a day to collaborate. We do have some exceptions to that. Like there's field employees who generally work on our towers and stuff. So they kind of do their own thing. They're not really in an office ever, really. And then we have some teams like IT that are primarily remote, but then they get together for larger blocks of time if they're doing like sprint planning or something like that. So, but for the vast majority, it's the hybrid. And Kim, your productivity concerns, I think, are warranted, because what I've noticed of these first few weeks of being in the office, and I imagine this will normalize over time, but it is kind of like Heather said, with everyone, getting together, moving into their dorm where everyone just hasn't seen each other in so long, that there's a lot of that talking and hanging out in each other's offices. So I found it a lot harder to get my work done so far.
Makes sense. That's such a good point, because when we are in the office and there's like, at this stage, there's like 10 people, it's like, oh my gosh. So you're right, we're doing that hallway chat. For sure, sorry about that.
Hi, this is Diana over at Voya. So we, as a company, have not gone back, but we as a company have also changed our structure so that the majority of people will either be hybrid or virtual. So we only have 5% of the staff that's essential that has to be in the office. There's a category office hybrid, which means you're in the office more than you're at home. Remote hybrid, which means obviously you're remote more than you're in the office. And then we have virtual orange, which is, and because our color, Don, you talked about your color being purple, ours is orange. So we have virtual orange. And I've been virtual orange now for over 4 years. So our entire law department, from a law department perspective, we're pretty much all either in the virtual orange or the remote hybrid. We are not going, fully back into the office. As our company, even our senior management of our company, there's only one who's now in the office. The rest of them are all virtual. So we kind of changed the direction on how our company is going to work. And I think it was easy for us because, or it was kind of the way we worked anyways. We may have all been in buildings, but because of how we're spread out throughout the country, we were working with people all over the country. So I would go into an office in Windsor, Connecticut, and most of the people I work with in Atlanta, Scottsdale, Minneapolis, Jacksonville, they were just everywhere. So I didn't really, some days I'd literally go into my office, walk into my office. The only time I saw anybody in Windsor was when I went out to either go to ladies' room or I went to go get lunch or, coming and going. Otherwise, I didn't have meetings. I didn't have anything with them. I was working with people all around the country. So, that's kind of made it easier for me to go virtual. But we have consolidated. We own a couple of buildings and those buildings are been consolidated. So we had like clean out month, like in November, people in the law and compliance areas went in and cleaned out all their physical space, got all the files and cleaned out, either destroyed or sent to Iron Mountain, or they're now in a locked room to be scanned and go digitalized. And so we're moving everybody to be able to work virtually at any point in time. And we are looking for, we will be having, hopefully in the spring and, either the summer and fall, some kind of activities to bring people back into the closest, office that they're available, to do some kind of, team building activity or just some kind of company-wide activities. But those haven't been planned out and, because of all the changes in times, they really haven't been scheduled yet, but that's the intent. But as I said, we're not looking to go back into the offices. They're looking to have everybody continue to work remote. But that's what we're doing as a company and as, the law department goes.
Nice. Thank you.
Thanks, Diana.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think our situation is similar to what Diana was saying. This is Pilar from Mgmt. So basically our office were not totally closed because there were only like a few weeks and specific moments of the pandemic that they were closed for government, recommendations, but they have been remain opened with limited capacity. So basically what we have done now is to extend to 75% capacity. We're not 100% capacity yet, but the employees were going to the office during all these months. So basically we have a booking system where you basically can book and you can decide where you want to see depending on who is in the office and you want to see. And it's a way to, let's say, be able to have face-to-face interaction with the specific people as well. But basically we are not going for now. There is no plan to force anyone to go back. It's gonna remain voluntary. And the interesting thing is like there is a lot of interest from all the employees to keep flexible. So we thought that everyone was like dying to go back to the office. The reality is that the productivity has increased, and the employees are really not wanted to be forced to go to the office. It's going to remain voluntary, and it depends on how things go. The company will decide that we're going to have like one day that you had to go to the office or 2 days, but for now there is no plan, and there's been a lot of ask for employees to keep as flexible as we can. And let them go to the office when they want. And to be honest, we're working very well, as Diana was saying, remotely, and we have we are very spread, and so we are used to really do a lot of interactions online. And it seems that for people it's working, it's helping to, manage your life better, to not spend time on commuting, and so that you can really invest more time on your hobbies and your family, whatever you want to do. And the other one is like, we also got a subsidy for the company to adapt your house to any needs you have. And we are receiving like monthly subsidy as well to support employees with the additional costs of internet, lights, gas, whatever. So that's basically not to having to go back to the office if you don't want. So I think that's also helping people to feel like it's fair to stay at home, and the money that you're saving versus the time that you're saving as well is probably helping for them to want to have the hybrid model.
And Pilar, where are you located?
I am in Madrid, but we have offices in most of the main European cities, so in Milan, London, and Munich, and so like main cities. But I'm personally sitting in the. You can see I'm working from home. You can see my dog in the background. So, but yeah, and in Madrid.
Thank you so much. Ron, you were going to speak as well?
Yeah, I'm located just north of Atlanta. I started during the pandemic, so it's funny. I onboarded a new attorney this past week, and she asked for a tour of the building, and I'm like, I really don't know the building. I've only been there like 4 times, and it's always been, from the front door to the conference room. So I had to find somebody that knew the building. But when I started, there had already been, the company had already started undertaking a future of work project. So like maybe a year into the pandemic, they announced that, things were going to be going more to a hybrid model. And that was this past, late last summer. And then we were going to go into a kind of a, kind of a temporary, let's start this and see what happens. But then, with the updates and the Omicrons and all that stuff, the starting dates for opening the offices, quote unquote, opening the offices kept on getting pushed. Our office never really closed. We just had instituted like a color scheme where if you were the pink team, you could go into the office this particular week, that sort of thing. And we had some people that decided that, they didn't, working at home wasn't conducive to their productivity. So there was actually one person who actually never left the office. And, all the typical mask mandates and whatnot. But then we've recently, the company decided that yes, it's going to be hybrid, but it's more of a relaxed type of a hybrid approach where there's no focus on the number of days that you should be in the office. Whether it's once a week, twice a month, it's up to the managers and their teams to figure out what activities it's important to be in the office for. So if there's, a monthly staff meeting that everybody wants to get into the office for. And so it's more like, like for me, I've been to the office less than a handful of times, but it's always because I want to sit down with my boss in front of a whiteboard. And and do that kind of those kind of activities, and usually it's not even for a full day. but it's very flexible up to the managers and their teams for the most part. There are some, some groups that are mandatory that they have to be there due to the nature of the work, but for the law department, it's going to be very, very flexible.
It's neat. Oh, I'm sorry, Ron, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, there was one project that we had to, that the company went through actually. Since most people, when they started working from home, they're like, well, I need an extra monitor, I need this, I need that. So they said, well, just take from what's in your workspace and bring it home. So now going back to the office, there's, and because of the hybrid model, the company undertook a project where they went through every workspace to make sure that there was at least one monitor, a docking station, a keyboard, a mouse, the correct adapters, because in the meantime, over the past 2 years, the laptops we have now, the wires didn't connect. So so they went through that project just to make sure. And I think probably, well, a lot of our offices, like in London and other parts of the world, there's more of a hoteling arrangement where you don't have an assigned space. And you just go into the system and book a space for the day. Possibly that might happen in the US in some locations in the future. But right now it's just, making sure that, there is what you need in out of workspace in the office, so that when you do go there, you can work well.
Exactly. Yeah, that's good. We have that booking system actually in our office. Last year we already talked about who think they're not coming back to the office. So we took those offices. So we have like 4 offices that are floating offices. And then we have a whole bunch of cubicle space for people to sit if they want to come in, but we've labeled them and put everything in it. To your point, we had to replace a lot of stuff because we thought it was temporary when we went home some years ago, and it wasn't. And so, so we went through that process as well. So thank you for that. I'm curious, does anyone on the call have either been in the office and never been home, or it has mandatory that you have to come into the office on a certain day? I know Heather spoke to that, but is there anyone else on the call that is, because I would imagine that would be a struggle at some level if you have that.
So I'll jump in. My name is Andrea. I'm with CNA. We're downtown Chicago. Hi. My first time participating in this interest group, so thank you for having me.
Welcome.
Thank you. So we haven't had our come back to the office message delivered yet. Like they tried to get us back in like in September of last year, and then thought again that maybe it was going to be, kind of after the first of the year, and that didn't really work out. I'm expecting it to come probably. It's a 30-day notice, right? So my guess is in the next 2 weeks, we're going to get a notice saying that April is the time. It seems like a lot of people are starting to come back. But for our organization, each functional area decided on the amount of days in the office that would be required for their team. So for the law department, it's 2 days in, Tuesdays and Wednesdays. The rest of the time is remote. And so the idea is that those are collaboration days. We all have our workspaces to go to. And, my goal coming back will be to try to take advantage of as much face time as I can while I'm in the office, knowing too that I'm not going to have a lot of computer time. And so I'm trying to kind of think about how I'm going to rearrange my workload to adjust for that. It'll be a little bit, now I'm just on calls, I don't know, 70 or 80% of the week, probably a lot of us are. But I'm trying to think about like how I'm going to rearrange my workload. And I think a lot of people are thinking about that. Because you know what, the commute downtown, seeing people you don't normally see, like it's going to be a distraction, certainly for the first few weeks until we kind of settle into a routine. But thinking, noting that we're thinking about how we're spending our office time differently than we did pre-pandemic, right? It's about making connections. It's about seeing people. That's going to change what you can accomplish on those 2 days in the office. So.
Oh, that's so true. So true. Thank you for that. Thank you. Thank you. All right. we want to move to the next question, maybe?
We can move to the next
Unless
question if
unless we have more comments, because
right, unless people want to
Great.
jump in. We love it when you jump in, but yeah, otherwise we can certainly move to the next question.
Yes. I got lots of
I'll-
notes.
I will take that as a cue to move on to the next question. Absolutely. Next question being, what lessons have you learned along your journey? Because this really has been a lengthy journey. I mean, we're maybe a week out from being 2 years. And I'm happy to kind of jumpstart the conversation. There were two things that we as a legal ops department at Walgreens have learned. Number one, never assume anything, ever. And number two is really sort of make no permanent plans. I think, you can have the best plans in the world, but you really need to allow yourself a little bit of flexibility here. And I will give you a great example of that. Last summer, when things were going great, we put together a video for one of our town hall meetings that was held in June. And we brought leadership back to campus, and we wanted to kind of showcase what improvements had been made on campus. And we did, it was kind of cheesy, but it was fun to do. And we had kind of come back with, oh, hey, look at who I found on campus here. And, and we were just kind of talking to different members of leadership. And it was really kind of a commercial for sort of trying to generate a little bit of enthusiasm and a little bit of interest in coming back to the office. It worked a little bit. And then when things started going downhill in the greater Chicagoland area, as we got to the fall, we saw that, wow, maybe that wasn't a good idea to do that video. But I think, we sort of assumed that things were going to get back to normal and that we were all going to be in the office in the fall. And then the Delta variant kind of changed our plans there. Mm-hmm. And then, really Omicron after that. So I think we have learned to temper those plans or the, I think, thought to make those plans with, giving ourselves a little bit of an out with flexibility, just in case it doesn't happen or something unforeseen happens. So those were the two biggies that we learned, and I would love to hear from everybody else.
I would say one, definitely the flexibility, Chris, I think is a great point. I think as a company, we learned to be a lot more flexible about where and how people work, and that we can still succeed at the same time, right? I think there's always that fear, maybe at some level, that if we're not in the office working, that things will fall apart, and clearly they didn't, so that's good. Mm-hmm. The other thing I'd say personally that I noticed is that the little things matter a lot, right? Especially in this virtual environment. So like little things like, sending pizza to your team every once in a while, or a little gift, or just something to let them know you're thinking about them and making them feel connected to the company. While sometimes those things could be a little cheesy, like they actually do build that connection in the absence of being able to have the physical presence, and just meeting more often and just checking in with people and ask them how their personal life is going as well. So just trying to find ways to have that connection you might get, when you're hanging around the quote unquote water cooler and stuff.
Couldn't agree more, Don. It is so important to maintain those connections, even with doing little things. We sent a holiday gift to everybody, which was really it was like an embroidered fleece blanket, but it was amazing how much goodwill that generated and really made everyone feel good at a really tough time of the year. So couldn't agree more. Wonderful point. Thank you.
I think for us, one of the things that was really huge for us has been really the work that we've done around mental health, because it really made us reassess really how we were, and I would use this word, extending grace to people. I think when you're in the office, and before, when you were sick, you would come in when you were sick. Like it was like, I can't stay home, I got to go to work. And we didn't think about anyone else or what that meant for anyone else's family. And so just the stress we dealt with people with, because we are already overachievers and work over more than we can. We're always saying like, slow down, you don't have to work those, so this one made it worse because people were at home working those things, trying to navigate their kids. And we just didn't anticipate some of the issues that came up. And so I think we did really well as a firm to say, here's some things, they bought us, every employee, the Calm app. They sent out like books and things like that. And then we set up specifically with our EAP, things that, we opened things up for people. We brought in coaches and mentors. Like we just went whatever we needed to do to get people okay. And that effort before COVID, I don't know, I can't imagine what we would have talked about to get that type of attention. And since then, we've gotten so much more productivity because people are logging off to go jogging and, you know, or do whatever it takes to get there. So for us, that was the thing. And as managers, we've been talking about how do we continue to incorporate that and not lose that with this transition, having people in and out, and how do we keep that piece that we do care and that it does matter, and that what do you need to work better, and to be mindful of that instead of getting back into this regular kind of rhythm of not paying attention to that. So that was really huge for us.
Yeah. And that's such a great consideration, because it has been, you know, not only professionally, but personally, a very stressful couple of years, you know. And Dawn, it sounds like it was really well received by everybody at Milliman. And I think that your journey to try to continue that is definitely admirable. It's something that, you know, we need to certainly consider at Walgreens as well.
And
So
our
thank
work
you for sharing
actually,
that.
yeah, and our work actually increased, like our profits, everything has increased. So it just shows that taking care of one thing will take care of the other, right? Yeah, thank you for that. Anyone else?
One of the things we did at Wanza, we're a very small legal department. We're actually the North American branch of a global company, global legal department. So there are about 13 of us throughout the US. And what we implemented early on is our brunch/happy hour Friday. So for half an hour on Friday, either at 11:30 or 4 o'clock, we have a Zoom call with the team. And the only rule is you can't talk about business. So we either have our coffee or our afternoon beverage. And quite frankly, it's been something that we need to implement even when we go back to the office, maybe having lunch as a group more often, or because, you know, you have that kind of one-off who's in the office that day, or who's across from you, or you've been locked in a conference room all day and you haven't really come out. I think we actually socially have those opportunities to engage more often and be more friendly and grow relationships, personal relationships, but also we learn more about each other. How many kids who's riding a bike, who's lost a tooth, who got a new pet, who, you know, that kind of stuff. It's been really valuable. And we're looking at ways, you know, we're going back no sooner than May 1st. They stopped promising dates. So they give us a no sooner than date. We're going back May 1st. We're looking at we're looking at core days. So days where we have our in-person meeting where most of us are on campus, if not all of us. And we're looking at just ways to make that easier. But one of the things we're definitely considering is how do we keep doing this, keep up this little half an hour social engagement. And you don't have to show up, but mostly everybody does. And, you know, it's a great way to end the week and, you know, kind of keep in touch. So
Neat. I love that.
Yeah, that is great. Thank you, Kathleen.
Yeah.
So Kathleen, I think those were great things. And I hope, I don't want to be the Debbie Downer, but I hope it does actually occur when you go back. And the only reason I say that is we've been back since October and 3 days a week, unless you have an extension for living with someone who's immunocompromised or children under 5. And I can tell you that what I'm hearing is people are going into the office, doing what they need to do, and they are leaving as soon as possible. Because we have learned, obviously, that with the pandemic, there are more things that are important than work, right? And when you have people commuting hours to get somewhere, to sit in a seat for so many hours a day, even though they were doing their work perfectly fine over the last 2 years, some of those building that we had of relationships that had been built up, or the closeness, right, on these calls are not occurring as much. And I don't know. I mean, we'll see as time tells, right? Once we get to the summer, because, you know, we're literally in the heart of the West Loop downtown. There's a ton of restaurants, a ton of outdoor stuff. We have even an outdoor an outdoor patio. We've got like a 9th floor with an area where you could have, you know, host a after hours party, or there's a bar up there. People can buy their own drinks after hours. Of course, everything is. So we'll see if people start going to socialize a little bit more when that stuff occurs. But like I said, right now they're not getting as much done because they're having to commute, and they want to get in and they want to get out. And that's
Oh.
that's the bad news.
Yeah.
Sounds like you may have to flip so when you're coming into we're having these mandatory in-office days, maybe when you're in office, you have mandatory Teams calls days. So where you are connecting and still getting together and having that touch point. Because I didn't think about it from that end. You're right. You come in and you're used to being home. So everything that you're doing, I'm so sorry with this Teams call. Everything that you're doing is thinking, I got distracted because the Teams call just came in. Sorry. We just got our phones, just FYI, we just got our phones connected to our Teams thing, and it comes in. And I don't know what to do to stop it. So I apologize.
That's okay, Dawn. They need to design something because it's a huge distraction. But Stacy, you really raised a good point around, I think, weather more than anything else, because those of us who are still contending with winter, it's a big consideration. It's cold, you're dealing with snow. And even though the weather's starting to turn here in the greater Chicagoland area, it's not still, it won't be great, or at least somewhat manageable until April. And that's kind of the hope too, is weather sort of suppressing some of that in-office attendance as well. And hopefully will we see a spike as the weather, or will we see an improvement? I guess I should say, spikes being crazy, but will we see an improvement actually as the weather gets better? The days get warmer, we get a little bit more sunshine, things like that. So a fantastic point. Thank you, Stacy.
I'll chime in again. Our company did some of the same things, the Calm app. We got, gift bags in the mail. One day we got this random, candle, and, just different things that makes you smile. But I'd say one of the lessons we learned along the way is with our support staff. Our company has grown so much just in the last 2 years that we've been from home. We've expanded 4 or 5 new offices over in Europe and the UK. And I think, everyone's plate is just so overflowing, but to allow the support staff to kind of lead on some of the projects we have, and, they really rose to the occasion and were able to, let their talent shine. And I think, would that have occurred if we were all in the office? Maybe not, because the priorities might have been, slightly different. So I think that's one really benefit that came out, that the support staff really was able to shine and really add value and lead in some of those projects.
Yes, thanks. Great point.
So something that we did was, we have an emphasis on community service. So when we started, people started working from home, LexisNexis did a really good job of creating virtual community service type activities. And that was an outlet for people to kind of get together, non-work related, and, get to know each other socially and that sort of thing. We're going back to, in-person community service type events. But we're also keeping the virtual as well. So I think that's going to help.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Ron.
Awesome.
Great point.
Yeah.
So this is Vonda Collins from Altria. I did all those comments that you made about the learnings. And I'll speak a little bit more on the operational side.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that we learned was the value in face-to-face communication. Like, we deal and work with a lot of attorneys across the country. And most in the past, when we weren't both virtual, a lot of those conversations was just by phone. It was no Teams, it was no Zoom. But without having to travel and incur additional travel expenses, we were exposed to a ton of different folks within that supports us from outside counsel that we typically wouldn't have had those sort of face-to-face conversations with, because we were forced through Teams to have those conversations now. And so it built better relationships in that we were able to get exposed to different outside counsel attorneys, diverse, in particular, that were able to support us and our team. So I think that was one of the big opportunities and learnings from an operational perspective on our side, was the opportunity and exposure to other attorneys outside of our organization and building better relationships through those face-to-face conversations.
Awesome.
Couldn't
And
agree more about that.
the other thing I would say is the cost savings, right? We learned how to take depositions fully. Our attorneys didn't necessarily have to travel to the headquarters to have conversations. There was a tremendous amount of cost savings from the conversations as well.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Thank you for that, Wanda. Anyone else? Any lessons learned along the journey?
Should we move to surprises, Dawn? What do you think?
I think so.
All right. What has come out of the blue at you throughout this journey? I think it is a fair question, and again, I'm happy to kick it off. We received an email Monday from our chief people officer, essentially, in not so very specific terms, sort of described that they were in the process of evaluating roles for remote capability, if you will. You know, are there roles that can be fully remote? Are there roles that, you know, where you might need to be in the office? And that really kind of hit us as a surprise because we weren't expecting that. We traditionally have been an in the office company for the last, gosh, I don't know, 120 years probably. And it was just, it's kind of a surprise to see the company making that major shift and evaluating the roles that, you know, Chris, what you do is something you don't need to be in the office for. You're always welcome to come into the office, but you don't have to come to the office. So that was a big surprise. And I think going forward, as new roles develop and they're created within the organization, I think that's going to be an important component of that. So that was one of the more recent surprises that we've had. And welcome any thoughts that you have or surprises that you've encountered as well.
So Chris, I would say that we had around the time that they sent everyone back to the office, or most of the people back to the office, there were open roles that were coming up that they automatically just were putting remote, which I have never seen in the 22 years that I've been with McDonald's. So that was interesting. And then what they did was they said, you know, if you, this is the schedule, you're coming back 3 days a week. You don't have to have the set 3 days, but you're coming back 3 days a week unless you have one of these exemptions. And if you think that your position could be a remote position, you can apply with your manager. And then it goes to an officer and it goes up the chain to figure out whether or not your position really is a remote. But I can tell you out of our department that we have, at least at MHQ, there's probably, trying to think, because our department now is up to 400 globally, but I think we're probably somewhere around the 220 at MHQ. There's very few positions that got approved to be remote, solely remote. So at least to my knowledge, right? And there are open positions. So, you know, we're growing just because of some of the areas of what's going on with the pandemic. But then also, I think people are looking at what is the most important to them. Finding remote, a lot of people that I was shocked at are finding remote, solely remote roles, or less days in the office, right? So, and we're talking, you know, we're talking people who've been there 10 years, 15 years, you know, we've got retirements of people who are 25, 30 years. So as a legal ops team, we're having a hard time trying to keep track. The org charts are, we already went through a reorg at the end of December. So we're already like trying to figure out, it's like a moving org chart. We should just take people's heads off of there and just put their, no, I'm kidding. But there is a lot of movement within the department because also people are going for professional growth areas, right? So they're looking at other additional opportunities when you have that regular retirements that are coming up, or people who are saying, yeah, you know what, maybe I'll just stay home. That allows more people to look at those roles and to move. And so we're seeing that even just people switching teams and moving. Again, it's like I need a conveyor belt for the org charts. Like they keep, you know what I mean? Keep rolling. So a good thing though, right? So development, that's a surprise that, you know, who would think the pandemic would create that area of development within the department. New jobs being created and then movement.
I'm curious too. That's such a good point. I'm curious and we just with your reactions button, could you raise your hand if you went through job restructure like more than once? Like, because we have, and that's such a great point about the org chart. That's what made me think about it, because we have to keep changing it. Is there any, like, if you use your mode, or you can come off if you want, but I'm just curious how many people have had restructures, like the structures changed at their business. No one. So you guys, oh, okay. But for the most part, everyone still kind of kept the same, because we've had to create new bubbles too, like new things and build things out really quickly and shift from one thing wasn't as useful as another thing. So we've had to rebuild it or mesh it into something else. That's interesting.
Not yet, Dawn, but our GC is retiring at the end of the month. So we anticipate a little bit of restructure within the greater legal department.
Okay.
Based on what happens there with backfills and other things
Yeah.
like that. So
interesting.
More to come. Yeah.
Yeah, that means that most of us have all the positions and roles remain the same. So literally everyone could have worked from home. That's interesting to me. Because that's interesting. Sorry, it's just me, my hair blowing back. Because I'm like, oh, that's really interesting. Thank you for that. Thank you for letting me ask that question. I was just curious based on what Stacy was saying.
And Stacy, I would, Shiv and I were also talking about this as well. It is mind-boggling to me where we were always there's no remote positions, and now they're coming so fast and furiously. Even within our own legal department, we've hired a few new attorneys, and 2 of them are fully remote. And I think, sometimes you're looking at the people who have been just above and beyond for the last 2 years, doing everything from home, everything that's requested of them. And then you're gonna say, yeah, you need to be back in here for 3 days. And they're saying, but like, prove to me why do I, like, if I've not been producing? So, I think that's gonna be a more in-depth conversation at our company as we go forward and more people are being hired remotely, because it doesn't make sense. I'm all for if you have a company, a department like Anchor Day, and you have a meeting or you're doing something, but for the most part, it's just not sitting well, because it doesn't. It just seems so unfair to everyone.
Yeah, it definitely. And then you figure out, so legal has one of those non-exempt employees, right? So our admins and our paralegals. And when you have to commute a couple hours a day, you now have to make sure you get that time in somewhere for working, right? So that I know, like, I'm seeing some of those departing, because that's creating some issues in that area. But yeah, I definitely agree with you, Kim. I think there are several people that do too.
Yeah.
So.
You're adding like 3 to 4 hours a day onto those individuals' workday just with the commute alone.
Well, and with transportation being reduced, so those trains haven't come back up for us.
No,
so
they're
mine's
not
about
running
4.5 hours.
Yeah, they're not running at the same time, the time frames that they were before. Like, even for example, I go into the office twice a week. I would be able to choose any one of 4 buses within an hour. Now it's 1 an hour. That's it.
Yeah.
So you're definitely limited.
Yeah, and I see in the chat about people leaving companies that are going to companies that are remote. I mean, that's a thing as well. That's one of the reasons why we remain so flexible, because we don't want to lose our people, and we have hired so many people remote. So it's like, how do we say, because you live in Seattle, or not the greater Seattle area, right? You got to come in an hour or two, when we just hired someone in Atlanta. Like, it doesn't make any sense. So to your point, yes. Yeah. And I just noticed the time is 8:52. I really am. I think it's good to get to this next question about going forward. Yeah. So sorry, Chris, I just jumped in on your.
No. We're up against the clock, Dawn, so it's a wonderful. Thank you for pushing it along. We really do appreciate it. I think changes and challenges. I mean, I think Stacy has brought up the talent acquisition challenge. Just, it's going to be harder to fill those positions, and I'll further muddy the water there, and we'll go third rail here, if you will, but compensation. How do you compensate people who how do you fairly compensate people who are coming into the office versus those that are fully remote? Because if you have to drive to your office or if you have to take public transportation, that is getting very expensive very quickly. And it doesn't look like it's going to, we're going to see gas prices go down anytime soon, and what are your considerations when you, to compensate those folks? So, apologies for throwing that in there, but it is, I think, a consideration.
Yeah, it's a big deal. I mean, even in just the hiring. I mean,
oh, for sure.
You hire someone in Seattle and you hire someone in North Carolina, it's a different thing. But we don't, we were hiring people initially until HR came in and was like, we need to rethink this. But we were hiring people initially just at whatever our cost was here. Like if we hire somebody at whatever the cost, we just hired them at that package. We didn't think. And then HR was like, wait a minute, we can't just hire, you can't just do that. Like, and so we had to, speaking of compensation, we had a big that was one of our surprises, actually. One of the things that we were like, oh, we didn't know that. So, so anyway, that was one of our things. I think compensation was really big.
Anyone else?
Yeah.
We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, definitely gonna lose good employees or have lost.
It's a mixed bag here because I will say one positive that's come out of it, at least for legal, is that tended to do our hiring in either Pittsburgh, where we have our mass concentration of attorneys, or in Houston, which is our headquarters. But this whole situation has kind of, I think, expanded our horizons a little bit. And we've been starting to post jobs all around the country. But I will, with the caveat that there has to be a Crown office nearby that they can do the hybrid scheduling. So it's not sort of like a fully remote deal.
Yeah.
That's going to be tricky, I think, as we go forward. I think for all companies, right? It's all about talent and leverage, honestly. Like we're trying this system, but if it gets to a point where we can't get the talent we need, I think we're going to have to adjust. I think everyone's sort of playing it by ear and hoping that people will kind of settle back in and do what they used to do. But I think that remains to be seen, like how much has really changed in the psychology of, I guess, the American worker or the international worker for some of our people on the call from other places, but just, how much are people willing to tolerate at this point?
Yeah,
that's very
great point, Don.
Yeah, great point. Because that's what they did with us, is like, hey, you need to at least have an office near where you're hiring the people at. Like, you can't just, we didn't know. We played the innocent. We didn't know.
I think it would have been, an easier argument if you were out maybe a month, 2 months, maybe even 3 months, but we've been out for 2 years. You can't say it didn't happen and no one produced. Like, you just can't say that.
So true.
I'm sure people have gotten their performance reviews and have done quite well. So how can you say I'm not getting my job done? You've told me I'm doing a great job. You've given me, maybe a promotion or maybe a raise or bonus or something like that. And then, I'm with you, Kim. It's really hard to say it with a straight face. You can't do your job.
And for me also, I think it has been a nice discovery, and this is one of the changes I see, is that there is amazing talent that is not always close to big cities, and there are people that they have other values. They want to have a different life, and they were losing job opportunities just because you don't want to live too close to a huge city where you're spending huge money for something that's not returning value to you. So I think that for me, that flexibility to find the right talent and the people with the right values that they can fulfill a very promising career without having to live in a big city, I think is great. So it's bringing more opportunities, better talent, and also people that are fulfilling better lives. And for me, I hope that doesn't change, to be honest, and that this is one of the lesson lines that we can keep after these 2 hard years.
Yes, for sure.
Absolutely. Thank you, Pilar. Great point. Okay, we are 3 minutes from the top of the hour.
Wow.
A huge thank you to everyone who contributed. We really, it was a great discussion. We so appreciate your thoughts and, insights on what your companies are doing, as return to the office, starts, it's march toward inevitability. So thank you so much for all that. It's been another wonderful discussion. We'll handle a couple of housekeeping things here before the end of the hour, or as we get to the top of the hour, rather. A quick reminder that our next meeting is going to be Thursday, April 7th at 11 o'clock Eastern time. This is going to serve as a substitute for our in-person exchange meeting that won't be happening in Chicago, unfortunately. So we're going to cover the year in review. We're going to survey everybody for topics for the new year. We're going to do some great housekeeping things, and it's going to be a nice discussion. So we hope that you can join us on April 7th. One other quick reminder, we are still looking for a co-chair. And if you're interested in that, please feel free to reach out to me or Rebecca or Dawn. We would love to give you information on what it entails and the great experience that it is, and whatever information you might need. So I think please take that into consideration if you have any interest. Bronco, I don't think we have anything from the ACC side. So it's 2 minutes to the top of the hour. Dawn, anything as we close it out?
I just want to say thank you. I always enjoy the discussion, and most of all, I just really love just working together. I was going to say fellowship because I'm all in my feelings, but I really I really do appreciate this group. I believe that we bring each other a lot of information, and just to be able to come and talk about these things and be able to know that you're not alone, and then also to learn new things is really just such a huge benefit. So thank you for the hour. Thank you for giving us this.
Absolutely. Yep. You give us the greatest gift. You give us your time, and we are so grateful for that. So thank you for your time. We wish you a great rest of the day and a great month, and we will see you in April. So take care, everyone.
Thanks,
and stay
everyone.
well.
Thanks,
Thank you.
everyone.
Bye.
Okay.